In Haitian voodoo, the line between life and death is not always the clearest. For centuries, tales of the undead, soulless bodies enslaved by dark magic have haunted the Haitian imagination. But what if these weren't just stories, made up little fairy tales, something interesting to say? What if the dead could walk among us, not as mindless monsters, but as victims of an ancient practice? Hey y'all, I'm BlaqueWitchYaya. Thank you so much for tuning into this video and happy Black History Month. And like I said before, on this channel all month long, we are going to be celebrating Black witchy history, doing deep dives into the stories of Black magic, literally, that shaped our culture and our practices, from stories that we may or may not know, and how hoodoo, voodoo, and just simple magic is intertwined in the cloth of our history. So today we are going to go over to Haiti, where we're going to talk about zombies, which is a popular topic, I feel, within the Haitian culture, along with mermaids. I have a separate video on that coming this month as well. So the Haitian culture is very rich and diverse. I always said, and this is not to be offensive, I promise you, in my head this is a compliment. I just give very interesting compliments with similes and a lot of adjectives. Their language sounds like cursive honey milk, like just very smooth and suave. Like whatever they say, I'm like, yes, ça passe, like you can have it. It's just such a nice type of accent. Let's do a brief summary, a spark note version, little sampler, teaser, appetizer version of what is Haitian voodoo. So Haitian voodoo. Now I'm specifically saying Haitian voodoo and not just voodoo because they're not the same thing. Haitian voodoo refers to the history, practices, and beliefs rooted in Haiti, while voodoo usually refers to the Louisiana or US version. People use the terms interchangeably, but there are some major differences when you dig into the teaching. So in this video, we're going to talk about Haitian voodoo. Speaking of teaching, let's jump into a little history. Voodoo came together during the 17th and 18th centuries in Saint-Domingue, which we probably heard it more as Santo Domingo, which we now know as Haiti. Enslaved Africans from places like Dahomey, Congo, and Yoruba blended their spiritual traditions into one cohesive system. This wasn't just about faith, it was about survival and resistance. They were forced to adopt to Catholic beliefs, but instead of giving up their beliefs, they mixed the Catholic elements into their practices so they could worship under the radar. So it looks like they're practicing Catholic beliefs, but it's their spirits. But here's the thing, this magic didn't stay under the radar. It didn't stay hidden forever. During the Haitian Revolution, voodoo became a powerful unifying force for the enslaved people. It gave them strength and courage to fight for their freedom. One of the most legendary moments was the Bois Caiman ceremony, where they called on the spirits to guide and protect them. These rituals weren't just about rebellion, they were about independence, and they worked. In voodoo, the soul is split into two parts, one being the big good angel, which is like your life force, and the other being the little good angel, which is your personality and individuality. A boker, who's like a voodoo practitioner, can capture the little good angel, turning someone into a soulless vessel, and just like that, you got a zombie, a proof of what happens when the balance of life and death is disturbed. Speaking of life and death being disrupted, let's get into the story of Clairvius Narcisse. We'll call him Claire throughout the story. So Claire was born January 2nd, 1922 in the rural village of Lester, Haiti. Claire had two sisters, Angelina and Mary, and one brother whose name is unknown. They were pretty close growing up, but an argument over land that Claire refused to share with his brother caused a strain in the relationship. So keep that in mind. It's now April 30th, 1962. Claire is 40 years old and was once a fairly healthy man. But today, he woke up feeling a little sick. He's like experiencing a whole bunch of symptoms. He has a fever, cold sweats, feeling tired, he's sore. He tried a few home remedies, but nothing seemed to work. He just started to feel even sicker by the minute each time he tried to cure what was going on. He decided to go to the hospital after he started to cough up blood, but nothing at the hospital seemed to work. over the course of 3 days, with all hands on deck at the hospital, the doctors could not find a cause or a cure, leading to Claire to pass away just 3 days later on May 2nd, 1962. He was placed in a cold storage for 20 hours where he remained until his burial back in his town. Sister Mary or Marie identified his body, and he was buried the following day in a local cemetery. Now, 18 years later, it's now the 1980s. The siblings have learned to deal with the loss of their brother. They're continuing on with life, gaining a new routine. So one day, today, Angelina is out and about running errands, doing some shopping at a local market when a random man approaches her. She turns to the man, giving him a look like, "Hey, can I help you?" And the man says, "It's me, Claire." And of course, Angelina is like, okay, this man is weird. She starts to walk away. Then he stops her again and refers to himself as a childhood nickname that only close family and friends would know. But she brushed it off, thinking anyone close to the family could have known his nickname. Like, what's the point of him doing this? Then he says something else. He starts sharing very specific details of their childhood, only things that siblings would know. You know, in the house, like when you're growing up, is what happens in this house stays in this house. He knew what was going on in the house that was supposed to stay in the house. Claire is spilling all of the family tea. Angelina is like looking at him, talking, taking in all of the information, trying to make sense of how in the world did this strange man know all of this family information. And as he continued, she was able to confirm, this random man is my brother that passed away. And she's trying to figure out, but how he passed away over 18 years ago. My sister identified his body. How can this is not making any type of sense? So we're about to make sense of it, because here's what happened. So let's go back to May 2nd, 1962, when Claire was pronounced dead. So he was actually just in a state of paralysis. He couldn't move or speak, but he was alive. He was mentally aware of everything that was going on. So imagine, he hears the doctors call the time of death. He feels himself being placed into a cold storage. He hears his sister identify his body. He hears everything that's going on at the funeral and the burial. He feels and hears the dirt covering his casket, but he can't move or respond to it. And like, I could not imagine being buried alive. I feel like that triggers the claustrophobia that I don't have. So while accepting his faith that he is being buried alive, just a few hours later, he hears a voice approaching his coffin. Then he hears someone digging above his coffin, and he realized that someone is coming to rescue him. Like, he's like, okay, they must have realized their mistake. Now I get out of here, reunite with my family. Then when his coffin is open, he is looking eye to eye with a familiar face and a few other unfamiliar faces. But before he could put two and two together in that moment, the unfamiliar faces began beating him and holding him down, while the familiar face forced a paste-like substance in his mouth. Immediately, he began hallucinating, but that was when he realized, this is the man who poisoned me before. This is why I was sick. Claire was then taken away to a sugar plantation where he would work as a slave along with other fake death victims under the control of that familiar face that poisoned him until that man died. Clairvius spent the next 16 years looking for his family. He wandered around the different towns, wrote letters that went without an answer or response for years until he sees a familiar face at a local market, and it's his sister Angelina, and that's where we are right now. So we're back to the 1980s where Claire is telling his sister everything. In the midst of the story, he mentions that he was sick in the first place because he was poisoned, and the person that poisoned him was the same one that dug him up and brought him to a plantation. And I know you may be wondering, okay, so out of all people, why him? Well, let's ask the brother, because he was the one that contacted a boker, which is the familiar face, the guy that poisoned him, a voodoo priest to poison Claire to teach him a lesson. So the familiar face he saw was the boker who was working with his brother, who wanted to teach him a lesson for not sharing his land. So his brother was like, oh, you don't want to share the land? Okay, I'm going to poison you. Like, okay, now it's no longer your land. It's going to go to the next man in the family, which is me. So we got to kill you off. So now the story's getting around. Everyone's trying to figure out, how did this happen? It catches the attention of Dr. Wade Davis, an ethnobotanist from Harvard University, who traveled to Haiti in the early 1980s to investigate the case of Claire and the whole phenomenon of zombification. He could not figure out, how did this man turn into a zombie? And it was proven that this was actually Claire. So his journey began with interviews and conversations with locals who strongly affirmed confirmed the reality of zombies and explained that zombification was rooted in voodoo practices. Like, this was not their first time hearing it. It wasn't like breaking news. They're like, oh yeah, they turn him into a zombie. Yeah, we can believe it. It happens quite often. They described it as a punishment inflicted by bokers who could use spiritual manipulation to turn people into soulless, compliant workers. Intrigued by these accounts, Davis sought to uncover the biological and pharmaceutical aspect of what was going on to explain the role of zombification and the cause of it. He focused on the preparation of the so-called zombie powders, which were mixtures used by bokers to induce a death-like state. Davis collected samples of these powders and analyzed their content, finding that many included substances from the puffer fish, which contains tetrodotoxin, a potent neurotoxin capable of inducing paralysis and mimicking death. In addition to the tetrodotoxin, Davis discovered the use of a plant known as zombie cucumber. This plant contains a hallucinogenic and psychoactive compounds that could cause disorientation, memory loss, and extreme suggestibility. Davis theorized that the combination of the tetrodotoxin to stimulate death and combining that with the zombie cucumber, it created the person to be in a compliant state and could explain the zombification process because basically they're out of it. Piecing together his findings, Davis concluded that zombification was a blend of pharmacological voodoo spirituality and cultural belief. While his theory provided a scientific framework, he acknowledged that the psychological and social power of voodoo beliefs also played a crucial, if not the main role, in making zombification effective. Zombies in Haitian voodoo are deeply tied to the spiritual beliefs, cultural practices, and social dynamics. They are not the flesh-eating monsters that we see in movies, but rather individuals stripped of their will and individuality. Often as a form of punishment, zombification is typically seen as a response to betrayal, moral failure, or social disruption. It serves as a cautionary warning against violating community norms and underscoring the importance of harmony within the Haitian society. Through manipulation of the part of the soul that holds a person's identity, a boker can transform a living person into a soulless vessel, a fate considered worse than death. Spiritually, it symbolizes the ultimate disconnection from the cycle of life and death, where the individual becomes trapped in limbo, neither fully alive or fully dead. While stories like Claire's highlight the phenomenon's culture and spiritual roots, zombification is also intertwined with power dynamics. Bokers believed to use neurotoxins, all mixed up together, can manipulate the body and mind to control their victims. Historically, it has been a tool for both spiritual enforcement and social control, but its practice today is less common and utilized in secrecy. Modern accounts suggest that it may still occur in rural areas, though it's very rare. I'm guessing it's rare to the public. For Haitians, the concept of zombies reflect deeper spiritual lessons about the balance of life and death, the consequences of moral fallings, and the enduring power of community and ancestral guidance in shaping one's destiny. Let me know what you think about this story. Are there other zombie stories you've heard of you want me to cover? But let me know what you think. Do you guys believe in zombies? Do you feel like you ever encountered one or saw one happen? What Haitian stories have you heard of that we can dive into? Let me know down below what you think. And like I always say, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Until next time, you guys, Ashe, baby.